edition of the Darrin Horn Show. It's presented by St. Elizabeth Healthcare. I'm Rick Brewing alongside the head coach of the NKU North's Darrin Horn. Coach, a little bit different version of the show today. We've spent all year catching up with different players, coaches, personalities around NKU basketball and the college basketball world. Season's over. We're going to wrap it up and talk a little bit about how the season went now.
Yeah, no, I mean, tremendous first year. So glad we've got the opportunity to do this. As you said, have got to, I think rightfully so, kind of give the opportunity to get to know our program much better and the people that make it, whether it's players or coaches, legends like Kenny Shields. And so it's really been a fun ride.
Yeah, it was fun shining the spotlight on some of those personalities within the community. Now, the story of this year's NKU basketball season, I think everyone would acknowledge, was the struggles through the month of January turning into the end of the year that you had in February and March, where you turned around, won 7 of your last 9 games, and really started playing your best basketball at the right time. When I bring that transformation up, what really comes to mind for you?
You know, I think honestly the resolve of our players, right, and the adversity that they went through. You know, some individual with guys, obviously collectively with going through a tough streak in January. You know, we probably, as I've said the last 2 years, which means we probably need to evaluate it, right, Rick, overscheduled early on, not just in opponents, but in terms of the structure. And so that was challenging. And honestly, probably underestimated. I just heard Sean Miller talk about this the other day. You know, you feel really good about your talent and your roster, but you still got some new guys. You got returning guys in elevated roles, getting them to mesh together and to deal with, you know, what used to be a longer process over a period of years sometimes is now being, you know, squashed into literally a couple of months. And so I think once our guys got through that and kind of found the groove, some individually and collectively as well, you know, we saw what this team was capable of late, winning 8 of our last 10.
I know you're pointing out there, in some cases it was individuals getting on the right page. In other cases, there were certain team things that you guys had to do. Was there 1 or 2 things, though, that really clicked for you guys that you noticed as like, okay, this was the big turning point for us? You know,
I mean, I think the obvious choice is when that playing well started, right, and which led to much better offense as well. When Dan Goresger got reinserted back into the starting lineup, it just seemed to not only his impact and how well Dan played, Rick, but it seemed to impact everybody else. Now Josh Dilling and Sam Vincent aren't handling the ball as much, so they're freed up to do a little bit more of what they do well. Trey Robinson goes from the perimeter to strictly at the power forward 4 position, where he's so impactful with his versatility inside and out. LJ Wells goes from being a only 4 to kind of a 4-5, where you can play a little small ball offensively, not get hurt defensively, and seem to play much better and more confident down the stretch. And so I think it was a little bit of a domino effect, right? That was probably led by Dan Goresger playing much better and getting more minutes.
Now, if you look at the metrics like Ken Palm or something like that, according to those metrics, your best win was that late win over Purdue Fort Wayne, second last game of the regular season. I think you'd also have to throw in that win at Oakland that kind of got you guys going as one of the best performances of the season. Are there any that stand out to you that you say, oh, that game was really when I thought we were playing our best?
You know, I think the Fort Wayne game is a good example because we had been playing well and we had gotten some wins, but to go on the road, especially with how tough our schedule was late, not only in the number of games and days, but every opponent that we played, the last 4 that we played, all had extra time to prepare for us. We're off, and we're traveling with less time in some of those games. I think we went on to the Fort Wayne game and the way that we won, right? We had to battle, hold on, lost the lead, came back, multiple guys stepping up at different times, Dan Goresger and LJ Wells especially, and then when we came home, again, on a one-day turnaround, when Youngstown State had an entire week to prepare for us and played so well in our home finale against Youngstown State, really made me feel like heading into the tournament, we were playing our best basketball, which, as we talked about, Rick, whether you're undefeated or haven't won a game, that's what you want in the Horizon League, is to play your best at the end of the year, and we were doing that.
Yeah, it feels like to me so much of this is about feeling like you have a chance when you're going to the postseason at this level. And once again, you guys really gave yourselves a chance with the way you were playing at the end of the year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Again, we want to be in the NCAA tournament every year. That's the standard that we set for our program, and that we everything that we do is geared towards that. But again, regardless of how you play during the season, you may feel better along the way. The only team that feels good right now from the Horizon League is Robert Morris, because you've got to win 3 games in March, or 4 games if you play in the first round. And, so you want to be playing your best to have a chance to do that. And we definitely did that late. I was really proud of the way our guys fought through the adversity that we had.
You mentioned the difficult schedule to start the season. If we could, I want to go back to that, because it opens with Florida State at Florida State, then at Purdue, then Nicholls and Cincinnati. Those are your first 4 games. I mean, really big-time competition. When you look back at that now, is there a takeaway from playing that schedule?
Well, one, we would have never played the Florida State game. Originally, that was going to be an NIL game that then, we were told couldn't be an NIL game, and so probably wouldn't even have played that one. But I think the biggest thing is we talked about a lot, Rick, both on the air and off, not just who you play, but the structure of it and when, right? If we were going to play those same type of teams, would have wanted to space it out a little bit different, where you're not on the road for 2 of those, then you come home for a team that's picked second in their league, and then a Big 12 team at home. Probably would have found a way to structure the schedule a little different in terms of who the opponents are when we actually played those opponents.
I want to talk a little bit about a few of the individuals on your team. Trey Robinson, a guy who's been around for 5 years. He was 3rd team All-Horizon League this year. He was Defensive Player of the Year in the league last year. He's meant a lot to this program. He's been here for a while. He's done a lot of things for it. What's it going to be like for you going into a huddle or a locker room next year and not seeing Trey Robinson?
It's strange, right? It was a little like when Trayvon Faulkner left. He felt like he was here forever, even before we got here, and got to coach him a long time. And I think the biggest thing is, we pride ourselves on the one thing we know we're going to do is we're going to develop our guys. They're going to grow as players. They're going to grow as people, and they're going to leave NKU with a degree. I mean, that's, again, in today's NIL portal world that a lot of people, don't like about college basketball, all of those things are still going on, and we're still committed to them at NKU. And just to watch the growth that he had, not only as a player, but as a person, this is a guy that's, going to represent NKU well, going to play professional ball for a long time if he stays healthy. And so we're really just proud of what Trey was able to accomplish.
And then how about Sam Vincent? He's a guy who injured his knee last year, fought back, worked really hard to get back to where he could play this year. He got to play a full season healthy. He was working through some things and trying to improve as the season went on. He's played 4 years now. What's his status at this point?
At this point, we're in the middle of an appeal process for him to get a 5th year. As a medical redshirt, essentially. By the numbers, in terms of percentage of games played, he's over. So that takes it to an appeal process. And literally, right now we're waiting and saying our prayers that, he gets that extra year back. In large part because, the whole reason there is an appeal process is for guys like Sam Vincent. Here's the consummate student athlete, right? And has meant so much to our program, and desperately just wants to play another year of basketball. And as we saw this year too, for a guy coming back from an injury, it's not as simple as, I'm 100% physically healed, I go right back to where I was, right? There's a process with that, and a tough one physically and more so mentally. We saw Sam have to go through that, and it would be great to see him get the opportunity to now have a full spring, summer, and fall fully healthy with the mental part to really get back to the level we know he's capable of.
I know fans will be keeping an eye on that storyline this offseason for sure. Josh Dilling, a guy that comes to you, Division II level, transfers up, you get him for 1 year, but boy, he really made the most out of that 1 year, didn't he?
He really did. And you could argue, Rick, for, we talk about performance based on your talent, your ability, and your experience, right? Those are relative things. A freshman probably shouldn't, have the same expectation as a junior, especially one that's been in your program. Here's a guy that comes in and hasn't played a day in our program, and if you look at those 3 things, you could argue he had as good a year, if not the best year of anybody on our team. He was reliable, consistent, made 100 threes at 41%, took care of the basketball. And as we saw, I mean, we had him on the show recently, right? This is a guy that, like, he's CEO material now. I've been really nice to him. I've coached him hard, but I've made sure we've been really nice because you and I might need to ask him for a job one day.
Yeah, I'm planning on that. That is my retirement plan, is to work for Josh Dillig, I think. You mentioned the 100 3-pointers. He currently ranks 13th in the nation. He was 5th in the nation when his season ended. He's currently 13th. Obviously, there's some more guys still playing. We'll see where he ends up, but really impressive season by Josh. And then Dan Goretzka, one more guy that I wanted to ask you about before we go to break here. He made the jump up to Division II. You mentioned your turning point with the team kind of coincided with his turning point as an individual. What was that like to watch him go through that process? I mean, I think we mentioned during this year, you had said that he had made that transformation as much as maybe any player you had ever coached before.
He really has. I mean, and again, you think you're going to get a really talented player, and just on talent, you'll plug him in and everything will go great. And there's a process to it. And Dan struggled early. And the one thing I'll give Dan credit for is he continued to work relentlessly. And his confidence as a player was never shaken. He knows he's good. And so I was so proud of how he was able to come through that. And, as you and I have talked so many times, Rick, maybe was as good a guard as there was in our league by the end of the year. And so we're really hopeful and excited that, he could be back for another year. And another great success recruiting story in Division II where, in this portal age, when you're recruiting for a week or 2 weeks, you do the best you can, but both player and coaches are rolling the dice a little bit and hoping it works the way you want it to. And right now we're 4 for 4 on Division II transfers. We're really thankful for it.
We got to get to a quick break, but when we come back, we've got plenty more to talk about and also going to look forward to what's ahead this spring and summer with the transfer portal and more. All that and more as we return here on the Darrin Horn Show, presented by St. Elizabeth Healthcare.
Do you have an experienced ACL doc you can recommend?
I'm right here.
Can you tailor treatment to me?
I'm right here.
Is it possible to get medical advice in the middle of the night?
I'm right here.
At St. Elizabeth, we provide a faithful commitment to the community, innovative treatments, and unsurpassed advancements in care. We understand you have questions, and at St. Elizabeth, we personalize care with answers you need.
We live with you, build with you, grow up with you, and dream with you. At Central Bank, we belong to the same communities you do. You're our neighbors, friends, and business partners. And through the relationships we build with you every day, we consistently serve you better. That's what highly personal banking is all about. We start with you.
It starts with the slice to make fresh cut fries, the squeeze to make fresh lemonade, and the sizzle of the sub. Oh yeah, pin-station.com.
Join Kentucky Wild and make a difference for our threatened wildlife. Your membership supports opportunities to experience wildlife conservation projects side by side with the Kentucky Wild team and receive some sweet gear too. Join today. Annual memberships start at $25.
Hey, thanks for sticking around. It's the Darrin Horn Show presented by St. Elizabeth Healthcare. Before we went to break, we were talking about some of the players on the roster, and we had to take a quick break. I want to get to one more guy that we haven't discussed yet, though, who still has some eligibility remaining, and he's another guy who I think really saw a transformation this season where he was playing well at different points, and he kind of hit a wall. You guys really challenged him, coached him hard, and he responded towards the end of the season. That's LJ Wells.
Yeah, again, LJ Wells is a guy that has been in our program 3 years. And there came a point where the expectation for him was, now you've got to play like that, right? And not just perform and produce numbers, but you've got to approach things in a way that says, I'm a guy that's serious about being a good basketball player and being about winning. And again, as you said, tremendous response from him down the stretch. Had a couple double-doubles, really rebounded the basketball, almost won the Fort Wayne game literally by himself for us, and is a guy that, again, I think if he can build on that, we can see take a real step, as he heads into his senior year. And again, with things changing in college basketball, what's your recruiting priority? Well, your first recruiting priority is your current guys, right? And LJ's a guy that'll be a high priority for us.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because I think for fans, it's an interesting time of the year. We're talking about these guys recapping their season. We're talking about who has eligibility left, and fans are wondering, well, who's coming back? Where are they all going to be next year? How does that process work for you guys? The season ends, you lose to Cleveland State. Do you immediately start meeting with guys? Is there sort of a buffer period where you wait to let them cool off and think about it, or what do you do?
Yeah, we had a unique situation where we came back, we headed right into spring break. And so, some kind of informal conversations, talking about sitting down and meeting more formally when they return from spring break and kind of talking about, where guys are. One of the things that's really interesting with it now is it's not just a one-way street anymore. It's a two-way street, and just kind of about how you fit and where you see things going for you, and do you want to come back? And again, the motivations and the reasons for guys are different from player to player, right? And so you kind of work through that and their influences, and what they tell you one day can change, the next based on a different conversation they have. But definitely sitting down and trying to get a feel for where everybody is, and letting them know where we are as well.
So that's talking about your guys' roster, but obviously you're going to go out and you're going to be recruiting new players to try to build for next year's roster. How do you handle that? I mean, are you guys already saying, okay, these are our needs and we need to start looking for those types of players, or how does that process work as you approach the portal? We're still maybe a week and a half away.
Well, I mean, it's exactly that, right? So you sit down and say, what do we think we need? And our approach is this, and our players know this. I tell them, we're trying to recruit over everybody in our program every year because you always want to get better. And we tell these guys, we're going to coach you like a pro to be a pro. Well, if you're going to be a professional basketball player, unless somebody's going to be Kevin Durant, or LeBron James, you're going to fight for your position almost every year, especially if you're an overseas guy. And so that's the first thing we do is where do we need to get better, and what are our needs, regardless of who we think we have coming back. And I think one of the takeaways from this year, in all honesty, Rick, is that we can't assume that guys are going to take a step or get to a certain level, right? We saw that with some guys. We just talked about LJ. He did it late, but there was about a 22-game, start of the season where pretty up and down, and not the production that we thought we might get from him last year. So it's really identifying what are our needs and then targeting those in recruiting.
I'm curious about that because you and I have talked a little about this off the air, that it's really become a year-to-year process. Every year is a new year. You're starting with a clean slate. And that's an interesting point you bring up about not exactly knowing how a guy is going to handle that 1 year. It's not necessarily building for 3 or 4 years of your career now. How has that changed how you guys handle recruiting or player development?
Well, it's become much more like a minor league team or coach, right? You could say pro, but pro guys are on contracts and they're multi-year, right? You hear LeBron James, passive aggressively talk about wanting to be traded, but sometimes that's not happening because he can't be traded to do his contract, and that's the best player in the world. And so, right. These guys can leave whenever they want. So we are literally putting together a roster from year to year and trying to have the best team we can have for that year. The program stuff is still the system that you run, how you do things, how you treat your guys, the development, the impact you're trying to have on them as people. But in terms of your team, you're trying to build the best team you can on a year-to-year basis with zero expectation for the future.
And of course, a big part of all of this now is NIL. And for fans, I think that becomes ambiguous. It becomes confusing when you start throwing that out because there's just not a lot of transparency when it comes to NIL. How have you guys handled that? What's the status of the NIL situation here at NKU, and what are you looking to do to try to move that forward?
Well, I think it's a thing that's really important, and the line that we always tell people, Rick, is that if you have great NIL, it guarantees you nothing. But if you're not involved in it at a competitive level, it guarantees that you have no chance. And the two teams that play for a championship in our league, Robert Morris and Youngstown State, are reported to have by far the best NILs in the Horizon League this year. And so it's a very important thing that we're really focused on. To this point, it's been all done through our own basketball staff in terms of fundraisers. We do have a collective that's done a tremendous job of trying to impact it with some specific events that we'd love for people to be a part of and involved in that really help. But it's an ongoing thing and something that, quite honestly, we've got to make some real strides at NKU to stay competitive.
We always said we wanted to give fans the real behind-the-scenes type talk on this show. I mean, can we peel back the curtain? Have you heard any figures either out across the country or in the conference?
Yeah, so it's really interesting, right? When you hear about a thing they call revenue share now that's coming to college basketball, they're talking about Power 4 schools when they say that have huge TV contracts and conference deals, right? And it's not really revenue share because which sports is it going to, right? Like it is with the NBA or the NFL or whoever it might be. But now things can technically run through the school, all right, which changes things a little bit in terms of the process that it takes place. But average this year at the Power 4 level between $3 and $6 million for a roster. Average at the mid-major level between $300,000 and $500,000 for a roster.
Wow. And there are ways that the fan base can start getting involved and helping out, right? You guys have done a few things along those lines.
Yeah, as I said, there's been our collective has had some events which have been really good, a golf tournament and a cigar deal that it was really a lot of fun that people really enjoyed. And again, it's a little different now because you can do it through the school as well. So, whereas in the past, any of those donations, weren't tax deductible, et cetera. Now they can be because it can run through the school as long as you stay under a cap, which at $20 million, I think we're good to stay under that. So a lot of opportunities out there for people that are interested. And it's really important. And again, it's not about whether we like it or agree with it or not. It's about that it is now. And I can tell you this, we've already started recruiting and every single player is asking for a particular dollar amount or want to know where we are with it. That's just the reality of recruiting now.
That's really good stuff, really good insights for the fans who are looking for more details there. Thank you for that. We'll come back and wrap up this final show of Season 1 of the Darrin Horn Show, presented by St. Elizabeth Healthcare.
Do you have an experienced ACL doc you can recommend?
I'm right here.
Can you tailor treatment to me?
I'm right here.
Is it possible to get medical advice in the middle of the night?
I'm right here.
At St. Elizabeth, we provide a faithful commitment to the community, innovative treatments, and unsurpassed advancements in care. We understand you have questions, and at St. Elizabeth, we personalize care with answers you need.
We live with you, build with you, grow up with you, and dream with you. At Central Bank, we belong to the same communities you do. You're our neighbors, friends, and business partners. And through the relationships we build with you every day, we consistently serve you better. That's what highly personal banking is all about. We start with you.
It starts with the slice to make fresh cut fries, the squeeze to make fresh lemonade, and the sizzle of the sub. Oh yeah, pin-station.com.
Join Kentucky Wild and make a difference for our threatened wildlife. Your membership supports opportunities to experience wildlife conservation projects side by side with the Kentucky Wild team and receive some sweet gear too. Join today. Annual memberships start at $25.
It's the final segment of the Darrin Horn Show. This segment is presented by Central Bank. Central Bank, we start with you. Coach, this is the final episode of Season 1 of the Darrin Horn Show. It is, we talked about it at the top, but it really has been a lot of fun getting to talk some hoops with you, getting to work with you, a media veteran like yourself. It was a good experience for me, but also just fun following the team this year and watching sort of behind the scenes how this all unfolds.
Well, the goal, as we said from the outset, was help people get to know our program a little bit better, and had Greg Campy on, which was a lot of fun, and I think the Kenny Shields episode is one that stands out for me, honoring a guy that really built what we're doing. Drew McDonald, the Hall of Famers that came on, so really a lot of fun for me. And as you said, so many people behind the scenes, just like a basketball program, that are the ones that really made this happen for us.
Yeah, definitely some people to thank. First of all, we want to thank our sponsors. Of course, we want to thank St. Elizabeth, Penn Station, Barleycorns, Central Bank, all of them great partners to work with on this show. And then we've got some people behind the scenes too that really put this show on. We just get up here, we talk for a few minutes, and then we leave. believe it's really the people behind the scenes that make it all happen. So we want to say thank you to our producer, Bill Farrow, our editor, Travis Gibbons, all of the NKU students and crew that filmed it and kept it going all year long, and the floor director, Madison Garrett, who kept us on time all year, and of course our executive producers, JT Torbeck and Max Edwards. They all played a huge role in getting this show going and on air every week, so we thank them for that. Coach, I just want to wrap it up with some final thoughts here. We talked about the transfer portal and what's ahead for your team this spring, how you guys are going to handle that. Just leave us with some parting thoughts on what really excites you about heading into next season and where the program's at right now.
Well, that continuing to grow and get better, right, with the guys that will return and the new ones that we'll bring in, and building a team that's capable of winning a championship, which we, do what we do here. And so, again, you got to give yourself a chance first. There's no guarantees, but we're really excited about continuing to do that at a really special place that's got a lot of room to continue to grow.
That's one of my favorite parts about this program. You guys never shy away from what the goal is here. It's to play for champions. It's to compete in March, and you guys talk about that always, and I'm sure you'll be telling it to your recruits this spring as you get ready for next year. All right, Coach, thanks for the final edition, final episode of this season of the Darrin Horn Show, presented by